Hey y'all, I'm Allison Asarch from Nashville, Tennessee.
Hey, I'm Sean Fraser from the Ritzy Kids.
Hunters, this is Johnny from Rail Motor.
Hey, it's Shane from Blind Season.
Hey, it's Rob Stanier, and you can check out my music on all the streaming platforms.
Check out my latest music on all the streaming sites.
Check out my debut album on all streaming platforms.
Check out our new debut album.
Check us out on Spotify and Apple Music. And you're listening to our friends, Braggy and Curly.
And my
Rossy.
favorite bands from Australia.
My two favourite podcasters,
Braggy and Curly.
Braggy and
Rossy.
Curly.
On the
Unfiltered and Undiscovered Podcast.
And Rossy.
All right. Hey there, everyone. It's Curly here, and welcome to episode 167 of the Unfiltered and Undiscovered Podcast. We've got another great show for you tonight. It's our last show for about a month because I'm chuffing off overseas to run another marathon and finally get to walk down Broadway and honky-tonk bars in Nashville, Tennessee. Really looking forward to that. So you won't hear us for about a month, but hopefully this show will give you something to look forward to when we all return. So welcome, boys. I've got Rossy from Sydney. I've got Braggy from Adelaide. How good is tonight's show going to be?
Oh,
I think it'll be fantastic.
yeah, me too. I love these shows.
Curly said it was going to be a really big show, so we've got a lot to live up to.
Well, last one before Curly goes. I'm hoping, Curly, when you on your travels that you do some roving reporting, and you know.
Are you going to see Alison Asarch?
I'm hoping to catch up with her at a songwriters round or something. So she's we're only there for like 3 days, so it's a very tight schedule. I think Katrina Burgoyne's playing on the Monday night we're there, so we might pop in and see her. It's a grocery store restaurant where she's playing at. So I've forgotten the name of it, but it's one of the bigger places there. She's got like a Monday residential. So looking forward to seeing that.
I had a story today. I was listening to this podcast, not our podcast, another podcast. It's by Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah.
Well, it's called Rolling Stone Music Now. And the chief editor, I think, Rolling Stone, Brian, I forget his last name. He runs it, and it's really cool. Sometimes it's a lot of modern stuff that I'm not into, but today he talked to Keith Urban, and Keith Urban talked about playing a gig at a Buc-ee's, like the service stations. You know them, Curly? Do you know them, Rossy?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
And he described it as something between an airport and a giant shopping center with like freaking 100 and something pumps. And
you can buy anything at Buc-ee's.
Yeah, so he had this idea. He thought, I'll play, it'd be good to do a gig here just a cool thing. And he thought, I'll just play out the front of the door of the main big building or just inside. So he got his road crew to organise like a small PA, a few fucking lights, some festoon lights, you know. Anyway, he's driving to the gig in his bus, and the traffic is banked up for fucking miles to the fucking place. And he goes, I think we need a bigger PA. We're going to need a bigger PA. So I reckon he got there. It was just massive. And he sent one of his guys out to the back of the crowd.
Wow.
And to see what it was like. And he came back and he said, what's it like out the back? He says, yeah, you can't hear nothing, but they're having a ball.
So that's fantastic.
Yeah. And it's on his touring list, you know. You know, we can whatever, played a gig at Buc-ee's.
That is cool. I saw a video of Keith Urban just recently, and there were some Australians at the back of his gig. So he stopped playing his song and started to sing that classic old Angels song, you know, Am I ever going to see your face? And the Aussies in the back, of course, go, no way, get fuck off. and he had to, and he stopped and he said, it's about now the American audience is now saying, what the fuck is going on?
It's so good.
Yeah.
It was really good. He actually talked about shit like that. He said, because they sometimes play with a click and a little bit of backing. And he asked the guy asked him, so you have to meet in the street? He says, oh, no, that just kind of starts. And then that all my crew are used to now, about halfway, I just say, fucking turn it off. We're doing this. And he decides he's going to, you know, go somewhere else. So,
yeah.
But he does it at the start, apparently, to keep things tight.
Yeah. I could see that it happened.
Yeah.
All right. So tonight's show, guys, off the back of last week's show where we had 14 of the most influential albums of all time. Tonight we're doing 9 of the most influential Australian albums of all time. But before we get started, I mean, it was said in jest in the chat group that maybe an album like Screamer's 76 could be seen as an influential album. So,
Absolutely.
And the reason why some of those early compilation albums, brought out by KTEL and other organizations like that, is often you'd see 1 or 2 top 40 hits on the album, but there'd be a lot of lesser lights. And I reckon there was a lot of Aussie musicians that got their initial inspiration around music just from one of those compilation albums.
Yeah,
I think so.
I've got one here, Curly.
Ripper. So for those on audio, he's just...
I'm holding up the picture, and it's got people like, I don't know who this is, Gary Shearston.
Gary Shearston? Yeah. What label is that? What label's that down there?
It says Fontana. So it's
Fontana Records.
Not even KTEL.
So Olivia's on that, Skyhooks on that, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of love these in my collection because usually on the back it's belonged to someone. They're second hand. It's belonged to some teenage girl, and they've circled, and put a heart next to the people they love.
The Daryl Braithwaite.
I love that it's got that.
The Daryl Braithwaite.
Yeah, I love that it's got that little bit of history on it.
Yeah. I think they're a sampler that started off for so many people. Like you got such a. I remember hearing stuff like "Love Grows Where My Rosemary Goes" for the first time by Edison Lighthouse on one of those. Yeah. All that early power pop stuff. I remember hearing it. Mate's place hearing Popcorn.
Oh yes, that's on one of those. I'm sure I heard that on that. Yeah,
just a wide variety of stuff you get to listen to.
Yeah,
very cool.
Cool.
Absolutely, and. For the Australian audience, I'm sure that we've just given some people some good memories of some of those very, very early compilation albums that came out. So, very much so. So, Braggy, let's kick off with you.
Okay. I'm going to kick off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Into the wind?
Into the wind. So, coming home. And the wind will change.
Me and Curly are going to run.
So Braggy, Rossy and Curly won the toss, and we've elected to send you into bat.
It's that time of year now, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
I'm going to dig some short ones in.
Sticky wicket. Well, I'm going to open the bat and from my place in 11 Sargent Street. I was 10 years old. My brother's 8 years older than me. He's gone away to Melbourne to college. And he comes back for Christmas holidays, late 74, this would be. And he says, man, I've seen this fucking fantastic band in Melbourne called AC/DC. Yeah. And he used to go and see him somewhere in he was going to Footscray College. He used to go and see him somewhere near there. And he was telling me how the front bar they played in was like the stage and the bar was so close together that Angus would go to the bar after the set and still have his curly lead plugged into his amp, just sit at the bar with the guitar in his head. So it's AC/DC High Voltage, which is their first album. I'm holding it up for the people that are listening. Fantastic cover. They did an American release, which is different to this. 1975 it came out. And I mean, I'm 10 years old and my brother brings this home and he puts it on. And the first track is fucking Baby Please Don't Go, a million miles an hour. And man, and it's really my first experience of proper rock and roll, proper full on, not like a pop thing, proper rock and roll. And I had no idea what Bon was singing about in half the songs, but what a street poet Bon Scott was.
The charm, man, the charm.
I've got an example of like Little Lover, which is one of my wife's favorite AC/DC songs. I saw you in the front row moving to the beat. Kill me when I saw the wet patch on your seat. I had no idea what that meant. And then after that he said it was a Coca-Cola. And I went, oh, okay. That's what and the last verse I love. You had my picture on your bedroom wall. next to Gary Glitter. And then he goes, I was standing on the stage playing rock and roll. I was a guitar picker. Never had a record, never had a hit. Oh, baby, you didn't mind a bit. It sounds beautiful.
So that was still in their very formative stages. So I know the drummer on that is a mate of ours who runs a pizza shop around the corner, Tony Carenti. He played on all those tracks except for Baby Please Don't Go.
Wow.
And he was a session player. Look, Tony says he thinks he played on all of them. The record suggests he plays on all. He can't remember what tracks he played on. So he did like John Paul Young and he did all that sort of stuff. He'd become into Alberts after gigging and just play the songs and then go home and not hear the finished product. Now, George Young played a lot of bass on some of that stuff too.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bit glam, Rossy, at the start, wasn't it?
If you saw what they looked like, it was very unusual, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the first. That's the recording of the first iteration of that band that was going to become AC/DC. Whereas they had Dave Evans singing before, and they had a number of drummers and bass players and stuff going through, still trying to figure out who they were. But according to those who were there, and I was a bit too young, everyone just knew that Angus and Malcolm just had it on in spades.
And Malcolm's right hand, man. Just that rhythm.
It's dynamite, isn't it? Dynamite.
So Braggy, you've chosen the albums because of the influence on yourself, correct?
Yeah. After hearing this, I wanted a guitar.
Yeah. Awesome.
And my brother bought me a guitar, and the first things I learned to play was just 12-bar stuff like this on this record. I learned A, D, and E, and away I went.
Yeah.
Have you learned G yet?
No, not yet. And I'm still waiting for the minors. They're too tough.
Don't try the F chord, mate. It's too hard.
But the video clip for High Voltage as well. So, Jailbreak. Sorry,
Jailbreak. That's the next album. Yeah.
So I can understand exactly why High Voltage is an influential album on yourself, because it really does. What bands would not have been influenced by AC/DC? So, Rossy, I'm going to call on your memory banks here. Who are some of those bands that have openly cited AC/DC as an influence?
Well, Rose Tattoo, The Angels, Airborne, The Darkness. Like hundreds of Australian bands, hundreds and hundreds of Australian bands. Everyone's got a bit of that in them, you play that's them, it's just
that's the riff.
You can't get it from anywhere else except them, and they're kind of brought Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf from Bo Diddley and all that sort of stuff to all of us. In a different way that the Stones did. The Stones brought that as well, right?
Do you think, Rossy, it's basically the birth of that Australian pub rock sound? I know the Easybeats come before, but they're still kind of Britishy sounding.
That's right.
I guess they've got an Australian. We're going to probably talk about them later, so we won't talk about too much. But it's just kind of that birth of that Australian pub rock, isn't it?
It is. Now, I'm not my memory's a little fuzzy on things sometimes, but there's a very good chance that the clip for High Voltage was shot.
Is there a clip for High Voltage?
Yeah, there is. And it possibly was shot at my workplace.
Really? Your workplace now?
Yeah, they played there in.
My Lord.
There's posters up. They were playing there in '76.
Right.
Yeah.
I've
got it. Like when I see the clip and I see the room, I go, "Ooh, is that?" I've always thought, "Is that?" I haven't got a confirmed kill on that yet. Someone may be able to correct me, and I will ask around and let you know. But it's a good chance it was shot there because they lived in Burwood, which was Burwood is like near Strathfield. It's probably a good 25 minutes from Hurstville, and they're kind of where they are. Burwood is like the heart of the inner west, and they just played everywhere in Australia, in Sydney, man, everywhere. Then they moved to Melbourne, whereas like Bond's really from Adelaide or from WA actually via Adelaide, up here. But Angus and Malcolm, when they first the band started, they're a Sydney band,
Yeah. Well, they were Well, I guess the brothers and that were in the camp, weren't they? The refugee camp.
That's exactly right. But when they went down to Melbourne and did like the iconic clip vault long way to the top in with the bus around the city and stuff, Melbourne kind of like this band that everywhere they go, every city in the world they've played at reckons they own a bit of them. They almost feel like they're a local band everywhere they went because they came in at the bottom and worked. You kind of love and admire their ethic. I just
It's just rock and roll.
They're a bit of a joke band when I was a kid. When I was about 14, 15, I was a bit like, oh, them, But all of a sudden, they turned around, they started doing Highway to Hell, and then it's just like, oh, well, actually, Power Age probably, or Let There Be Rock, those albums. It's like, listen to this, guys, they're killing it.
How good is Angus in the early days? But I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. When I was a kid watching AC/DC, I used to think he was like this He was I don't know what he like. He was like a Doctor Who was big in those days. So I envisaged Angus was like this thing that they just put an electric cord in and it charged him up, and like he wasn't human. So
and he wasn't, he wasn't. We know it wasn't drugs and it wasn't anything like that.
He didn't drink.
It's cups of tea, it's chocolate, and it's cigarettes. Caffeine.
Unbelievable.
And just the love of rock and roll.
And he just apparently he'd just always have a guitar in his hand, and that's what makes him what he is, I guess.
Yeah. And that tone is not like this. Like you listen, especially early stuff. There's no way you can get that tone without an SG and a Marshall,
and a very loud Marshall.
Yeah, there's no other way.
Yeah, it's killer.
Very, very successful band, and they certainly look a lot older nowadays than what they did back then. But that's a great album to start, Braggy.
Well, I feel like I've hit a few to the boundary. So who's in first drop?
So I'll go first drop because we'll leave the guru for the final on each round.
The best batsman is always bats at 4.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go for my first album, Stone Age Romeos by the Hoodoo Gurus. And one of the big things here from an influential point of view, and, it could be purely selfish, but this was really the first time that a band, so this came out in 84, right? So it was a year after school. I was out seeing a lot of bands, a lot of, bands that weren't being played on the radio except for, the likes of Triple Z in Brizzy and
Double J, maybe.
Double J in Sydney, yeah. So they weren't being played around. And this was really, to me, the first time that a band that I loved was actually being featured on mainstream radio. So
it was cool.
So it sort of took the underground independent into a new way, and it wasn't like it was like the whole Stone Age Romeos album has got pop all the way through it.
Oh yeah,
but it's also got like surf sounds. It's got garage rock. It's got psychedelic. It's and so it's not like they created an album to go onto that was inherently commercial. It's just that they made a really fucking good album that people loved listening to. And I Want You Back is just when those opening bars start playing for that, it just takes me back. Whenever I hear My Girl, I think about the bloody greyhounds in the video. It is just, to me, it was a debut album, and for them to make such an impact.
I agree, mate. Let's all turn on that opening track. Just fires out everything they're interested in. All of their influences, just one like a scattergun. Dave Faulkner writes some of the greatest Australian pop songs of all time. He's a genius, mate. The band at that stage, which was him and Brad Shepherd, who's a Queenslander, and Clyde, who's from Queensland as well, and James, who's from Perth with Dave. They came to Sydney and they had a few changes of the lineup. Once they solidified on that record is stellar. Like I listen to it often, and it makes me happy all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just have a smile on your face with it. So,
60s, 50s pop rock and roll, power pop garage. Pop
Yeah,
like
yeah,
culture.
they come in with those riffs, Rossy, and you think, oh, I've heard this somewhere before, but you haven't because it's so fucking poppy and so good. Simple fucking chords.
Yeah.
Just did it so well. I mean, you're going to talk about influences there. I don't know this for certain, but I hear Jet. Jet must have listened to Gurus.
Oh,
You
yeah,
reckon?
yeah.
yeah,
I
you're
think so.
my.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course. Oh, no
Yeah.
doubt about it. Like Dave is, like Dave's a godhead to so many of those people, right?
Yeah.
And essentially, as the band kind of grew, because Clyde was in the Hitmen,
Yep.
Yeah.
and they brought Kingsmill in, who was in the Hitmen, and Brad was in the Hitmen as well. So
Yeah.
basically, the three guys had all worked with Maz for years, and
Yeah.
they smoked it. That band's Brad looked like John Cooper Clarke in those days and looked very cool, right? And Dave had the long hair and it was all up and teased. And James Baker, that 60s, like looked like you straight out of the Trogs or something like that.
The Paisley shirts. Brad Shepherd always looked on song just
so cool.
Yeah, they had the pointy shoes.
And Clyde, the bass player, is one of the best singers in the country for backup vocals.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
great harmonies in this band.
Yeah, songwriting was great. I mean, who else is ever going to sing about a cyclone that hits Darwin? Seriously.
Oh, so cool. So Australian.
But then you've got Dig It Up and my God.
But that's a swampy murder ballad, you know? But that album's just got so much mojo. It got so much cool about it, you know?
Yeah, it's
they were
playful,
a great band.
It's
Playful,
energetic.
fun.
Yeah.
And they just kept getting better. Although that's a pretty high benchmark, I've got to say.
Very high benchmark, and they followed that up with Mars Needs Guitar, and it went to number 1 on day 1 in the chart.
It
So
did. It was a killer album.
That's how much of an impact Stone Age Romeos did. So
they're massive. They still do pretty well, you know. They've just been touring America.
Yeah.
They're still touring the States, and
they off the back of Stone Age Romeos, they really blitzed the college scene in America in the years after that. So they were just huge. So it wasn't just Australia that that album launched them. It was
completely transcended.
100%. So
what a great record. What a great record.
So I'm going to we're not handballing. I'm going to tuck the bat under the arm, Rossy, and I'm going to walk to the pavilion, and you're going to walk out.
Oh, Girlie's retiring.
Yeah. Well, my first album, and I always like to look at it I look at it like the historical perspective of it all.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for me, as we looked at last few weeks, albums only turned up late. Albums weren't really a thing before the 50s, right? And so for me, my first album is Easy by the Easybeats because for a number of reasons. One is that it spawned AC/DC, really.
Yeah.
100%. And I reckon because it made us realize for one of the first times, even though they're all migrant boys, it made us think that something of ours had value, like Australian bands had value, right?
Yeah.
They were sharp looking, cool looking guys in mod outfits with good haircuts, very groovy, doing songs about girls. Girls are hearts breaking over it. I don't know who would ever do that sort of stuff this day and age, but they're a reflection of the post-war migration, right? And it was and they kind of define Australia in that era to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Would you say, Rossy, that their sound, it's really, I mean, it is probably the birth of Aussie rock. It's got that, they're not as refined as the Beatles, but they're not as bluesy as the Stones were. They're kind of somewhere in between there, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They are. And George and Harry and and Stevie. Stevie was such a charming super talent, fun, cheeky, troubled, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's just such a great record. And anyone She's So Fine. Yeah, if you're going to do one song in your life, that's it. Like,
Oh man! And how many bands have covered them?
thousands.
The vinyls cover. What the vinyls did? What did they do?
I'll make you happy.
I'll make you happy. Oh, that's a great song.
But they're and of course, as we know, when the Easybeats went to England and had Friday on My Mind and collapsed,
Yes.
the George and Harry was stuck in a flat and just started writing songs.
Yes.
Writing songs for other people. Then they got back here, and because Alberts picked them up early, Alberts looked after the Easybeats. So when they came back, they kind of ensconced them as producers in their King Street studios in Sydney, and they kind of I've been through this, told you this stuff 1,000 times, but I think it's fascinating. And they got their brothers, they got Angus and Malcolm, and just sort of said, if you're going to do it, we're going to do it this way.
Yeah, that's right.
They didn't sign record deals; they licensed their records. This is how you don't get bent over, because they got bent over, the poor buggers, and they came back and now they've got a business that turns over at least $50 million a year if they do nothing. If they don't get out of bed, it turns over $50 million a year. Now that's what we call a good passive income stream.
Fuck yeah! You got to think, Rossy, that the song of AC/DC's "Long Way to the Top," if you want to rock and roll, would have had to be from stories.
But they also lived it. They all lived it. So the whole family have got it like embedded on their hearts. So for me, "Easy" by the Easybeats is an historical. Historical jumping off point,
doesn't it?
It does. But Johnny O'Keefe before that as well, Johnny O'Keefe, he was that same brash, raw rocker. Yeah, and there are other guys around as well. There's a guy called Warren Williams who's an early rocker in Sydney as well. And there's Digger Revell, and there's Johnny Devlin and the Devil. So heaps of those sort of rock and roll bands. But for me, because of the Beatles were the big deal, the Easybeats were our Beatles.
Yeah.
They were going to England, and they did a TV show, and Channel 7 broadcaster Easybeats farewell TV show. That's how big they were.
Yeah, that's massive.
And I remember going to the dance bar in the mid-'80s in Brizzy, and every time they'd put on an Easybeats song, the dance floor would just be packed out, right? So you'd be hearing like Sanctuary by the Cult, and then all of a sudden She's So Fine by the Easybeats, and no one's leaving the dance floor. In fact, more people are jumping on board. So it was just seamless. The music just was in there with all the underground stuff. It was just awesome.
I bet Don Mariani listened to a fair bit of it.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah,
they can really play too. Like,
Harry and George and
Yeah.
Snowy and Dick Diamond, and Stevie was just such a cool cat. Yeah.
Stevie sets the bar for the front man in Australia, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah.
And he had that cheeky, like Bond's got a bit of Stevie in him, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. That cheeky leer, the same cheeky sort of.
Yeah, Billy Thorpe.
Thorpe. I was watching some Sunbury this week, some videos of Sunbury as I was preparing for this, looking for the history. And I watched a whole documentary on Sunbury, and that was fascinating. Wow. Watching Thorpe and the Sunbury Aztecs ripping through those 12-bar classics.
Yeah.
But Poison Ivy by Thorpe is just a killer.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So, anyway, next.
Oh, I'm back up.
You're up.
Okay, a few years on, and I'm in a band because back then in '74 I wanted to get.
That's what anyone did.
And that's the next step. I'm at school, meet some schoolmates, start playing at school dances and shit because I'm nerdy and I can't find any girls. So I start doing that. And I'm actually the first kind of band, because I'm listening to the pop stuff and I'm listening to, it's early 80s. So I'm listening to the new wave, Duran Duran and fucking Flock of Seagulls. I've got the fucking plastic pants. I've got the big bouffant hair. I've got my
I can't believe it. Yeah.
I've got my girlfriend's shirt that went buttoned over this way.
Oh, yep.
I know. That's kind of like a cavalry sort of shirt.
Yeah, that's buttoned up on this side. That's the one. Yeah, I had them.
It looked like you were in the reels.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. We had in Townsville, we had probably the first Simmons kit our drummer boy.
Oh.
Simmons,
Two.
Oh, terrible sounding things.
Oh shit! Where are they? I've been looking for one on Gumtree.
Anyway, and so one of the songs we're playing is by an Australian band called INXS, and it's Stay Young, and because they kind of sound like those British new wave bands a little bit, you know. And then in 1982, Shabooh comes out. This album here, I'm holding up for the people at home.
Yeah.
And man, I just play this album to death. I adore this album. I got a little bit of stuff to tell you about it. It's their third album. By the way, when they paid the single, Rossy probably knows this. The one thing they actually paid for that to be recorded themselves with Mark Opitz. Yeah. And then they decided they wanted to make a really good album because they wanted to get out of Australia. So two of the boys went to England to hunt, and they could not find anyone, and no one wanted to record them. So they came back and got Opitz to do the whole thing. It went to number 5 on the ARIA charts, made the Billboard Top 100, had 4 singles. The One Thing, Don't Change, To Look At You in Black and White.
Those 2 middle ones are killers. Big
hits. The name of the album, interestingly, Shabooh, is I think it's called an onomatopoeia. Like it's a name that sounds like what it's supposed to sound.
Yeah,
and Farris came up with it. Yeah, Shabooh from the rhythm of one of the songs.
Oh wow!
So, and the other interesting thing about it is the clips for Spy of Love, The One Thing, and To Look At You were directed by Scott Hicks of Adelaide, who did the movie Shine. He directed those early clips of theirs. So I heard this, and I thought, oh fuck, I'm not, it's just finally an Australian band that sounds like those other bands that are. Because I hadn't quite graduated at that point to Chisel and that sort of part of the rock thing. I was younger. I'd heard it, but it wasn't in my wheelhouse just yet.
I was in the cusp of that. Like I was kind of caught. Like I loved all the classic rock, but the new punk and the new wave kind of swept me around at 15. So like when I heard "Just Keep Walking," I thought that was really cool. Like their song "Just Keep Walking," they kind of attracted me. When they started to go in a little bit funky, they kind of lost me a bit. Now as I listen to it again, I like it again. But it was just a period. I just went, I don't know if I can cop this. They did that Niles Rodgers. They did the record with Niles Rodgers, and it was like, wow, they're gone like. But how massive did they get? How big did they get?
They got massive. And just their songwriting, because I'm coming from that old school AC/DC thing, and now I'm hearing they've got their sax in it. There's all these breakdown bits. There's all these other rhythms, and they're just kind of, it's a little riff added onto this riff and another bit here. The songs are really kind of patchwork together, I think.
Yeah, but they flow.
They flow. Or maybe they're written and then they've deconstructed them. I don't know how they wrote, but.
Well, like you listen to the keyboard lines and say "Never Tear Us Apart" and stuff like that. Like it's all very, really grand and epic. And Hutchins had a charisma to burn.
Yeah, and a great lyricist too. He's writing stuff that way ahead of his years.
He was smart, but just his family are highly intelligent people. Right, his dad. But you see him; he was a smooth character. He just had that oozed charisma. Girls just loved him. Like he just. I was watching a clip from a modern band, and by modern I mean like modern to me.
Was it this century?
The 1975.
Okay.
The 1975.
Oh yeah. I've heard of them. Yeah,
because I've got someone who's making me listen to them, and the singer's swanning around in one of these early clips. He's got his shirt off. He's got leather pants on. I've just gone. He's just doing Hutchins. Move for fucking move.
Yeah. The spastic legs. Like Elvis Costello kind of did that a bit.
Yeah, he did. Buddy Holly on Smack.
Buddy Holly did it too, It's kind of, it's almost, you probably take it back to Elvis, really, those guys.
Probably. But INXS were like another cultural phenomenon, like the Hoodoo Gurus, like you put them alongside each other, and like Australia's developed some pretty good acts. That's
absolutely.
We're up to 4 killers so far.
And the other thing about early INXS, especially, that it was really welcomed by the Australian surf community.
Yeah.
They were really big. So, great album. Great album. I remember at when I started working with Kmart and I was learning the checkouts, it used to be the old buttons, no scanning in those days. And especially on a Wednesday night when you're Wednesday, when you're thinking more about heading to the court jester in town that night as opposed to doing work, you'd be doing on the buttons on the register.
That's cool.
I was actually quite pleased that I could do it. So, but anyway, all
That
right.
was your first instrument before you picked up the banjo.
But that is the instance of amazing songwriting when that melody is in your head now. For
So utterly iconic. So
Yeah.
just in the Australian zeitgeist.
and it's not even there's not even any words to that. It's just a little part in the song. Yeah.
All right. Next, let's talk about Paul Kelly again. I feel like I talked about these albums the other
you
week
didn't.
when we were
We
talking
talked
about
it was a different one.
favorite albums, but let's talk about Gossip, right? So this is one of the most influential, released in '86, double album, and I think one of the real killers here on this album is PK's songwriting, and this is when he really elevated his songwriting status. You know, if someone was to say there's a song out there around these church bells in Randwick, you'd probably think, oh my God, that's how do you write a song about that? But when you're listening to Randwick Bells, you're in the moment. You're in the room with PK. Randwick bells are ringing. Must be Saturday. And
There are
then
stories.
so he just had that capacity to write a song and put you right there, right? So St Kilda to King's Cross. There's another one. You just
Can I? That's because I think we've talked about this before a long time ago, Rossy, Curly.
Yeah.
The lyrics, like from St Kilda to King's Cross, CRISS, is 13 hours on a bus. He rhymes those two. I push my face against the glass. That's another different word altogether. And watch the right lines rushing past. So it's 4 words that actually don't rhyme, but they do.
But they do in the song.
It's genius, man. Genius.
Yeah, and you think about Leaps and Bounds, classic song, AFL song. It's been. You think about Darling It Hurts. You've got all these different musical influences coming in there. But to me, I think the real impact on Australian music was PK's songwriting and just putting it all together in arrangements that just worked.
Yeah. Another Adelaidean.
Australian songwriting, that's what it was.
Yeah, he wrote about his places in Australia. And it's probably the
Which
first
is
time
Don
you're hearing
Walker.
that, really.
Don Walker did the same. But like it's important to Australians to have their own songs, their own culture.
Yeah,
it's important to us that we have, like the go-betweens, or that means a lot to Queenslanders.
Apparently. 100%. And you think about PK and you think about someone like Missy Higgins. You can certainly see and feel the influences there. So
that's another great album too.
Yeah, there's so many artists that have been that were influenced by PK, but probably wish they were, because there's not too many better than him, that's for sure, in putting together a song. And even on like you wrote about Maralinga, which was so we start to see that first little bits of PK's social conscious, and so just it's rock, it's folk, there's rockabilly in there, but then there's
songwriting, man. Yeah.
But again, that's him getting into oils territory as well with Maralinga.
That's just on Missy Higgins, Curly. I put it out to the boys and girls in Rail Motor, and great friend of the show, Kat Murphy, better known as Annie Rail Motor now. One of her favorite albums, or she thought was influential albums, was The Color of White by Missy Higgins, and I actually put that on in the car driving out, thinking it's pretty good. Pretty good album.
She doesn't get that sort of accolades for being a dope, does she?
No,
Yeah.
she sings an Australian accent, which is another.
Yeah, she
quite cool
does.
Yeah.
thing.
And the big thing with someone like Missy Higgins and PK is that they've got they don't have to bend to anyone. They've got
No.
their own style, or they're putting out music their way, and we love it. We love them for that. And
Mm.
yet, how many artists feel that they've got to bend to get that commercial hit, or to bend to what the record label wants them to do?
That's the death knell, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
The longevity. Yeah, like people who trend jump. It's just like, I know a lot of people do it, and and you can't begrudge someone wanting to have a go and trying to get a deal out of desperation. But though the enduring legacy is people who have a vision and stick to it. I think.
I agree.
And the legacy of PK really started with this album. I mean, I know he had Post before that, which was another wonderful album, but where he now sits in Australian culture, and there's a movie coming out around How to Make Gravy, and who else in Australia has had a movie created from a song? That's how much that PK is just firmly entrenched in this Australian culture.
And their songs, those guys like Missy and him are people where you just need one instrument and your voice. Like this, you're not really taking the acoustic and playing something from Midnight Oil, I think, or INXS. They're just down to earth, beautiful songs.
But like his relationship with people like Archie Roach and things like that as well.
He's opened our minds to a lot of
he
things.
has. He's brought us along on his journey a bit,
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely. You're up.
Choice, Curly.
Rossy.
Good work. Well, okay. And I think there's a number of touch points as we go through. Because the Easybeats were Sydney, really. My next album was released in 1974, and it's called Living in the 70s by Skyhooks. Now, why was that an interesting album to me? And it's because, sorry.
I just want to say that out of all the people I asked about what they thought, this album came up more than any other album.
It was a lot about Australia. It was a lot about smart ass. It was about brash. It was cheeky. It was irreverent. It was 6 of the songs were banned. One of the songs on this was the very first album played on Double J.
Wow.
Yeah.
You weren't able to play them anywhere else. On one of the great compilation albums that came out, that Double J put out, was called Long Live the Evolution. And Skyhooks were on it. Dragon were on it. Radio Birdman was on it. Feather, which is my mate Warwick Fraser, he was on that. And his brother Stuart. Warwick Fraser, who was in the Tribesmen, who I know, and his brother Stuart, who was in Noiseworks, were in a band with John Swan, Jim Barnes' brother, called Feather.
Wow.
And they had a song called Girl Trouble. And like everything, like what Skyhooks did bring was that really larrikin side of Australian music to the fore. Like they were cheeky buggers. Greg McCain could write songs like nobody on earth. And and sure, they were glam. They had the crazy whacked out look and stuff like that. Right? That turned me off a bit. But then again, I kind of grew to love it a bit more as I got older.
Was he the main songwriter, Rossy?
Yeah, the bass player. He wrote Age of Reason for Farnham as well. And that's I was disappointed that Whispering Jack did. He was in Farnham's band for a while. And I'm disappointed that Whispering Jack I couldn't put it in the list, because that is the biggest selling album of all time. And I love Farnham for that purpose. But like, You Just Like Me Because I'm Good in Bed. What an hilarious song.
Oh
yeah, that's what your girlfriend said.
That's another one that my brother must have had that I had. What the fuck are these guys singing about?
But Cheryl was just a cheeky
shit.
Yeah, that's smart. But Cheryl was just a cheeky, smart ass Australian surfer bloke, And it was really and it brought to fore another part. And so the daughter Double J, Skyhooks kind of were one of the flag bearers of that. And they were from Melbourne.
Yeah.
It was in Sydney. They kind of were an Australian band and big on Countdown and everything. And I think their impact kind of sometimes gets a little bit, they're kind of swept aside a bit. Anyone who puts out a song and Iron Maiden covers it, they're a rock and roll band.
Yeah,
Iron Maiden have done a great cover of Women in Uniform.
Oh,
Yeah.
Which is
freaking rocker too.
Which is one of the most straight ahead rock and roll songs you'll ever hear, I reckon.
Yeah,
I love it. And that was
that song.
Yeah.
No, that was after Red left the band. It was replaced by Sydney boy Bob Spencer from Finch.
Right.
Yeah,
but so many good songs, man, on that album.
And it was produced by Ross Wilson.
Ah, there you go.
So Daddy Cool are another very important
another album
player.
it's another
very important
album.
players in that Australian scene with Daddy Cool and Ross Wilson.
Yes.
And Ross Wilson's had 3 or 4 careers. Like he's just killed it, He produced the Johnny's album, Highlights of a Dangerous Life. He could make them sound like a great band. He's a killer producer.
Yeah.
You give the Johnny's.
I love the Johnnies. I love them.
I got this from a friend of the show, Rob Stanier. I really like.
Whoop.
Braggy's gone.
What happened?
I don't know. So you got something from a friend of the show, Rob Stanier?
Yeah. I really like living in the 70s. When I was a kid, it was the first time I realized that an Aussie album could cut it with the big boys from overseas. And the first Aussie album I can remember that had so many catchy songs on the one album.
Yeah. I agree. Well done, Rob.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
That's because he's old like you, Rossy. He knows.
Huh? He's old like me.
Yeah.
So we're going back to Braggy
Okay.
for your last one.
I had a toss-up. I'm going to sneak 2 in.
Hey.
Just quickly. 1982, the same time I'm here in INXS, I'm also here in Midnight Oil.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I just did not know what I was listening to. An older boy played this to me, and I was like, what in the world? And once again, I was like, even though I was older, I was unsure what they were singing about. But then, and that talk about open up your conscience. These guys, like you said, Rossy, did the same thing. And I distinctly remember about this. This came out in late 82 or 83, and then they did that big tour of this, mainly of this album. And they came to everywhere. They came to Townsville, and the tickets were super cheap. And they played at a place called the Warehouse, Curly, which was the Mansfield. And I bought a ticket with my mate Darren Whittle to go and see him.
Yeah.
And then we won a ticket off the radio off 40O. They had some prize we could ring in. So we went both nights. They played Wednesday and Thursday night.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't believe they were going to play two shows in this little town.
And you can't believe what a knockout band.
Yeah, were they packed shows?
Oh. Packed. Both of them absolutely packed. The smell of marijuana was so thick in that warehouse. It was a low thing. And I remember being up the front for the first show and the roadie coming out and putting Garrett's mic stand there because I was at the front and he just kept raising it. So I thought, how fucking tall is this guy?
That'd be your Michael Lippold.
And then he came out and I was just, man, in that instant, I was a Midnight Oil fan, and I just went out and started buying all their records.
Oh yeah, what a band, mate!
I got some stuff about this. It was their 4th album, number 3 in the ARIA charts, 178 in America on the Billboard. 3 singles: U.S. Forces, Power and the Passion, Read About It. I don't know if you know, but on the album, on the vinyl, if you guys have got it or if you've ever had it, the last note of the last song just continues into the out groove. What's that called? The
run out groove.
Run out groove. So it just continues on until the needle lifts up. So
that's clever.
It's like a Beatles thing, like a Beatles thing.
Yeah.
And it's got great lyrics. Some of the lyrics I love of this is from Read About It. The rich get richer, the poor get the picture.
The bombs
will never hit you when you're down so low. Genius. And obviously Power and the Passion. It's better to die on your feet than to live on your knees.
Yeah. Heartfelt, fiery buggers. Rob Hurst wrote a lot of lyrics too.
And very surfy.
Very.
I could hear Mazawak in them.
They're all part of that same. See,
Yeah.
they're from the northern beaches of Sydney, and there was a
Right.
northern beaches scene, right? And
Yeah.
there were bands like Tamim Shad, and they were originally a 60s band called the Sunsets, which is a guy called Lindsay Bier. And they kind of, but INXS had a bit of that northern beaches thing as well, because they kind of, when they moved to Sydney, they were kind of up that way as well. They had a bit of a northern beaches, but the northern beaches sound, it's the Celibate Rifles, it's Midnight Oil, it's Tamim Shad, it's the Sunsets. There's a whole history, a rich tradition, and Powder Works Road is up that way. That's why Powder Works.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like they spawned a million bands on the northern suburbs of Sydney, I tell you.
And as far as the songwriting thing, I just thought, wow, they were so complex. Like their songs just went, they were journeys, man. They went off in different things, and I guess that must have come from playing them live and
a little bit of prog. They were prog too. Had a bit of prog in them.
Yeah. Is that right? Do you think it's prog?
Yeah, no, definitely. I've seen Magini play his solo stuff, and I've seen, like he's a genius, man. He's like a stunt guitar player. They like Martin Rossy and the bass player and Rob Hurst are just this powerhouse beast. And Magini plays keyboards and does all these stunt guitar sounds over the top that layers all these sonic soundscapes, and it's brilliant, man. That band have got so much like I know a lot of people go, I didn't like them until they got political. And so you didn't like them from track one, side one of the first album. Okay.
Exactly. Man, I loved first album, that Black Album, Run by Night.
Oh yeah. Oh man. I saw Garrett for the first time in 79, in February 79, in the room I work in now, Hurstville Civic Centre, right? They're playing with My Sex and the Hitmen for $4.
Oh wow.
And but one of the first times I saw the Hitmen too, and boy, how did that end up well for me? Anyway, I'd heard Run by Night, hadn't seen them because you didn't see these bands, right? You didn't know what they look like. Garrett's come on stage and he's wearing the blue singlet wrapped around his head, and he started doing his moves. Magini's on one side wearing a beanie, and he's got a fag hanging out of his mouth. He's playing an organ and playing guitar, and the smoke billowing out. Hurst is just steamrolling the entire room. And Andrew James, who was the bass player, is playing a Rick, and Martin Rossy on the other side. They're just leveling this place. Once Garrett, 3 songs in, took his head off, took the t-shirt, the singlet off his head, and was moving around I have loved that band from that moment on too. Like you,
there's a part in the movie that they recently put out. I think it was Madman Films put it about that kind of tour as well, where the guy, I don't know who it is. He's not new to the band. He comes in and they're setting up for this gig somewhere, and one of the roadies is nailing the drum kit to the fucking floor, and he's like, "Why are you nailing the drum kit to the floor?" And he's like, "You'll see."
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Rob Hurst, man, what a drummer! What you watch that live at the Capitol Theatre? You can look at the clips on YouTube.
I love that. Yeah.
Four Corners this week did that story on Live Nation, and they featured a bit of that footage. And I'd been looking at that footage with Angus that day because it's just like if you want to be a rock band and you want to go out on stage, this is how you start your show.
Yeah, yeah. When I'm locked in my room.
Down. Great.
Oh,
just
okay.
So great.
Curly.
All right. The last one for me, and it released in 77, but it certainly wasn't what I was listening to in 77. And really, I only got to know this album probably mid-80s. So talking about I'm Stranded by the Saints. And absolutely, the thing I really like in this, like the whole album, is just great songs, a couple of covers in there, etc. But what I really loved about the Saints was, people talk about it as being a real global influence on the punk scene, yet looking at the Saints, they're as far from punk as what was happening around the world. You put Sex Pistols and the Saints in the same room, and you'd be thinking the Saints are driving home in a ute with a can of EB or something, and whereas the Sex Pistols sort of defined what punk was supposed to look like. And I
you
think,
listen to the records.
yeah, and from when you read in behind the Saints went to England, and it was their whole image that sort of created this real clash between this punk culture and the sound that the Saints were producing. But they certainly influenced the punk scene. And then,
no doubt.
and then as you saw the Saints mature as a band, and Ed Cooper is just, once again, songwriter sublime, and I haven't necessarily liked all the stuff that Ed's put out, but as you saw Chris Bailey mature as well, some of those Australian classics like Just Like Firewood, came
Beautiful.
through, and
Beautiful.
it all started from this one album that was the start of the Australian punk movement, but it also gave the Australian bands, much like what we were talking about with the likes of Midnight Oil and INXS, it gave a lot of people hope that the belief that Australian bands could cut it on the world stage, because this was just a phenomenal album. I'm Stranded is the title track, of course, which is just one of those, a song written about catching a train at bloody 11 o'clock in Brisbane, so it's got a worldwide impact. So, but loved it.
Explosive.
They kind of, I can see why they're like, the Sex Pistols really angsty and angry, and whereas the Saints are a little bit sadder, aren't they?
Melancholy, but also thoughtful.
Yeah, a bit more thoughtful. Yeah.
Like Chris Bailey.
Deeper.
Chris Bailey, a little bit urbane, a little bit sophisticated, really. Like and at other times a drunken Falstaff style character,
Yeah.
But like Ghost Ships, Just Like Firewood, the later Saints stuff was beautiful.
Not as cartoon as those other punk bands.
But I'm Stranded, know your product, Down on the Waterfront. Like, come on. Like that band just cut through the bullshit. And it was just this entirely brilliant
and
zeitgeist.
Known to antagonize a couple of people along their journey as well. So
I believe the story of they've played with Radio Birdman in Sydney, and they're going, the Hitler Youth are up next. But man, what a pick that record is. And that's Queensland.
That's a great
Queensland.
pick.
Yeah,
great pick.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to finish the show with the Guru.
Before the Guru, can I just have a quick mention about this?
Yeah.
I just could not. It's very hard. I just had to put it in there because.
So for the listeners or the what, it's Cold Chisel East.
Yeah, it's Cold Chisel East. Sorry, Cold Chisel East. It had freaking
cheap
all
wine,
the great ones.
Ida,
cheap wine.
sitting on the outside.
Yeah.
I read a little thing about it. Just I'll be quick, Curly. And it's from Don Walker. He said that Barnsey was using a combination of red wine and speed to improve his vocal performance. And one thing I didn't know that I learned today: the cover art, is based on
Japanese artwork.
No, the actual art is based off the death of Marat by Jacques Louis David from the French Revolution.
Yeah. But you
very
you
sophisticated.
I'm glad you put this album in, Braggy. So Standing on the Outside, Choir Girl, My Baby, Cheap Wine, Star Hotel, Ida, My Turn to Cry. Just every song is just
killer. It's kind of like Sweethearts is good, but that album just took them to a whole new level, right?
It's fucking Rumours, mate. It's Australian. It's every song is killer.
I'll tell you a story about when that record came out. I was a kid and I was working in a bank, right?
Yeah.
And Cheap Wine was the first single. And the only way you could get a preview of the single was bringing 2SM to a special number they had, and they played the song to you over the radio. 2SM was the pop radio in Sydney, right? So I'm working in the bank, and I reckon I dialed it 30 times the first day at work.
They get the phone bill. What's this number? It's been phoned.
They wouldn't notice. Oh, the Commonwealth Bank. But what?
Sorry, sorry to sneak in before you there, Rossy. But
I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that one. I think.
worry.
Yeah, a lot of people hate Cold Chisel. Who played this week? They've been playing this week down here.
Yeah, they're playing there, and they're playing it in Adelaide at the 500, the race, the 400.
A
little bit with
Jimmy. How is Jimmy? Because his health
Apparently he's
hasn't
all
been
right.
good.
Apparently he's okay. And they've got what's his name? Chrissy Amplett's husband, Drummond.
Okay.
Charlie Drayton. Yeah, but like a lot of people I know hate Cold Chisel, and I just think, good on you.
Yeah.
Good on you.
Good luck.
They have to be the greatest band unknown outside of Australia.
That's right. Like I was talking to someone today about Body Swerve, Barnes's first solo album.
Yes.
And that was a rock and roll album. Like I went and saw that band about 3 times on that tour. They were killer.
Yeah.
Barnes was a beast, mate. A beast.
And Mossy,
Oh, you're too good. It's too good.
Our own Robbie Stanier did some gigs up in Darwin, and Mossy was up there, and he got up and played with the band. He was in the crowd. He got up and played. And he said, I think we played Proud Mary. He said he got up, he just turned the amp up all the way, the guitarist amp up all the way, and he just freaking burned it up. And by the end of the song, he was soaking wet sweat. Just one song. He just gave that much to a fucking some cover band.
Yeah. He's great. And my mate Maz credits him with, as they toured with Cold Chisel a fair bit with the Hitmen.
Right.
And Chris says that Ian taught him a lot about how to pull a sound out of a Marshall amp, because in the old days they only had the no master volumes on them. They were just loud things, right? So Mossy was loading the front end of his up with an old Roland Chorus preamp about this big, right? He was loading, and so that's how all those bands in America and England were doing it. They're loading the preamp, they're having a foot preamp that was loading the Marshalls to get that sound, and that's what Chris learned off them. So he tells me.
Wow.
And not be so loud.
Yeah, Chris may not, as he says, I may not like all of Cold Chisel stuff, but I have enduring love and respect for all of them.
Oh,
So
Don Walker's almost on a level with Paul Kelly as a strange
songwriter. Yeah, I think so too. I really do.
All righty, Rossy.
Sorry.
My last album is for another reason, and it's another touchstone benchmark. It's kind of like when Triple J first went national, bang, and it changed everything for everyone everywhere.
Yeah.
And in 1995, this bunch of 15-year-olds from Newcastle put a record out, went on Triple J Unearthed and Frogstomp. What an album.
Yeah.
I think Frogstomp for 15-year-old guys just is mind-blowing. Mind-blowing.
Did you get it from the start? I'm going to admit I bagged it early on.
I loved it. I dug it straight away.
To be honest,
it's hard rock. I had to love it.
Yeah. It's your thing.
Yeah, and you listen to it, and it is, Kev Shirley produced it, and he brained it. Like it was like it was the lightning in a bottle situation.
It's brilliant. I just didn't understand. I was stupid.
They went big, massive, globally, almost overnight, and like wow, and it brought a whole new set of eyes to Australia again in the 90s. Whereas the Easybeats had done it, and INXS had done it, Midnight Oil had done it. These kids brought the eyes of the world on Australia, and don't underestimate how big they were globally. They played Letterman, they played everywhere.
Oh.
Yeah.
I live with a certified Silverchair nutcase.
Yeah.
And I have seen so much footage of them, and they're killer. They are utterly killer.
I saw them live when they toured with Powderfinger.
Yeah.
There was the duet, the double thing, and they would switch each night. One would open, the other one. Just fantastic. And the last album, Lines, what's it called? What's the last album?
Parallel Lines?
No, not Parallel Lines. That's Blondie. Straight Lines. Yeah. That's
I like that stuff.
I love that album because it's him.
Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel much more. Yeah, just genius. Just eccentric.
Like Tomorrow hit number 1 on the Billboard charts.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're 15 years old living in Newcastle, and you've been bullied by the local kids for being like a fag. Next thing you know,
You know,
all those blokes' girlfriends want you.
yeah. Oh, that's
Hey,
awesome.
Braggy, your mate John Watson signed
Yes.
them in 1995.
Yeah. He's still there. Is he still there, man? Oh, they don't do it anymore, but he's
Yeah.
Midnight Oil manager now, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's managing Garrett.
and that was that's how he founded John Watson Management. That was
That's right.
That was his big signing. So,
He's not really my mate. I only haven't talked to him since I was fucking 21.
well,
What?
it says here on Discogs, right? He was first musician in independent bands and working at a local record store with Braggy.
I've gone, oh, bullshit.
It says that on Wikipedia now.
He didn't work at the record store, that's for sure.
But yeah,
yeah.
that band, that record were
Yeah.
like it certainly lit the fuse globally for a lot of Australian bands who followed them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that whole Triple J Australia opened up a bit globally. So we heard more
vibe.
It was. Like Marbo.
Yeah, it's the castle. This is and
it
just had them up. And the album cover's a classic as well, isn't it? So
it is, and it sounds great still because I hear it once a week, I reckon.
Is that cool. From someone else in your?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So they were the 9, or we actually got the 10.
Through
top 10. Well done.
Yeah. So, and of course, all of them could change tomorrow. So
that's exactly right. That's exactly it.
Let us know what your most influential Aussie albums are, wherever you're watching or listening this. Just put it in a comment. Yeah, let us know what you thought, and think about some of those great Australian compilation albums, and what was the most influential one that you listened to. The one that's sitting in the back of my mind is Wizards of the Water, which I think was a soundtrack to a surf movie. So
is that right?
Had some amazing bands on it. INXS on that one. So
yeah.
All righty. Well, as I said earlier, this is our last show for about a month, where we need a bit of a break. But no, I'm heading off overseas. So, but I'll give Rossy and Braggy a bit of a break, and maybe when we get back, we may get a chance to talk to some guys who may have finished their HSC by then. So. Yeah. Fingers crossed. So, but as always, if you've enjoyed this episode,
I'm saving up the questions.
Are you?
Yeah.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. And I've got to say, I'm loving Pocket Watch on social media.
Oh, they're awesome, aren't they?
He's working hard.
He is
so good, man.
And every time I see it, you just got to laugh. There's just something about it that's just, it's
a hard day's night. That's what it is.
It is.
Meets the Monkeys. Doing the Hard Day's Night movie. Yeah, Meets the Monkeys. Yeah,
that's exactly it. Yeah,
it's
it is.
So good, though. It's so good.
Yeah. So much fun.
All right.
We're on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. Check out the website, unfilteredundiscovered.com. Check out our playlist on Spotify. Just do a quick search for Unfiltered and Undiscovered. We're off for a month, but I just want to add, how good was Screamer 76? We'll see you next time.
See ya.
See ya.
See you guys.